Live on the air in the morning, Wednesday morning. Here we go. All right, let me that's the flyover part of New York. The Bronx. Some planes coming out of JFK, if people could hear that. And
Should be good though. Usually it's only about one every hour and a half.
What's up? I see we got 3 people in there. We're about to go live probably in the next 2 minutes. This is Talking Nets. This is episode 102. This is Keith McPherson, and that's Hudson Flynn. And we're going to talk about the Nets, back-to-back wins. We in control of our own destiny. You already knew that was coming. I think I'm good here. Let me mute my TV. And got the Harden shirt on. Hold on.
You got the MVP. He's coming back today. It's a Nets world.
Yeah, and we're wearing those jerseys tonight, so good choice. The throwback colors.
I think that's our last time wearing them as well.
I know, and I was just talking because I'm talking to Matt about some designs, and because our old look or our look right now, if people watching, you'll notice the Coogee trim on the left side of the screen. And we're going to do like a little bit of a brand refresh.
A little playoff rebrand.
Yeah, have something new for the playoffs. You know, the team has evolved. Things have changed since we first started talking Nets. I think it's time for us to change up as well. And
the D-Lo Nets aren't the iconic Nets anymore.
How funny is that, though? Like, Talking Nets started after the 6ix9ine dance on the bench and D-Lo making the all-star team. And we've come a long way, the team and us. Let's see, Mike James crossovers. I see that in the chat. Yeah, we're going to talk about who? Mike James. Who? Mike James. Sports fan says, when is it going to start? It started. We're about to fire off a tweet, though, because we want to get a little bit of an audience in here. We're going to send out a tweet to say, we live, y'all. Come hang out. Are you a Nets fan, or are you just a random NBA fan that likes to watch the Nets and then pretend like you don't like the Nets, but secretly you're a Nets fan?
We got a lot of those. We got so many other team stands in our mentions. It's like they're Nets stands. I love it.
They definitely are. And like, I'm fine with it. Come along for the journey. This is going to change our fan base. This playoff run is going to change our fan base for literally forever. And this is what happens with every team, your team wins and you get national fans, you get international fans, and that's what we're about to pull in here. All right, so let's take a pic right here, Hudson. You don't have to smile, but we both got to look at the camera.
Here, how about we got to get this.
Get the shirts in there. There it is. Boom. Tweet. And I'll say, we live.
Sports fan says Julius Randle's son cried again. Did he actually?
Yeah.
That's so funny. I missed that. I did not stay up to watch that game last night.
Me either, but I woke up early and I was seeing everything. And I don't understand why they keep posting that little boy. Like,
yeah, who is it? Is it Julius Randle's wife? Like, that's like a bad look.
So like Kaiden cries after every loss. I wrote on Twitter, I was like, he's got to save some tears for the playoffs. Like, don't cry after every regular season.
Like, that's terrible.
Don't cry after every regular season loss.
Broadcast like that. Hopefully he's only, look, once the playoff starts, he's only got 4 more times he's going to cry left.
All right, we live Talking Nets. Pull up.
Nah, he shouldn't have been a Nets fan. Absolutely not. He's Julius Randle's kid.
No.
They got their own little baby MVP, most improved player, talking all tough because they won a couple of games. Oh, they're the 6th seed. Woo! Oh, man. That's tough, though. Getting a game winner hit on you by Taylor Horton Tucker. OT. Yikes.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right,
this stream will work without technical difficulties. I promise. Keith promises.
Because last week just was not my week, bro. Last week was not my week. Sometimes you just have a week that like you're gonna take L's. And I couldn't get anything right last week. Like nothing went right, from my car trouble to a bunch of other things that I don't need to speak on. And then even trying to record Talking Nets, like it was blowing me, bro. I was like, what? Like my whole studio, all this stuff is set up to rock, and it was just failing. So hopefully we have no issues now. I'm about to start recording on my end and count us in. And you guys know the drill. We record live here, but in post-production, I make it sound good for the podcast. So bear with us on the parts that we pause. Talking streams, Doug Barrick in the chat. What up, Wingspan Pod? Let's see here. Okay. It is time to go live. Well, we're live, but it's time to record in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Talking Nets, episode 102. I don't have any clever number things. We're done with that now that we're past 100. But back-to-back wins. The Nets look like a different team. You saw what we did in Denver. We'll talk about that game. I know you saw what we did last night in Chicago. The road trip is over. Word on the street is the bearded one could return tonight. Man, what a time to be alive. We're going to the game Saturday. Talking Nets. Let's get it. All right, and I'll play some music for y'all.
We go hard. 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 We go hard.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talking Nets, episode 102. Feeling good. Hey, like I should. Hey, the last few episodes we were talking about L's, and I don't like talking about L's. I don't like talking about losing. With the talent we have, with all the hype we have, and all the attention we have, we know what we have to do. Win. Playoffs started. If you ask me, the playoffs started at halftime Saturday night. And we're here to talk about it. Keith McPherson and Hudson Flynn. Hudson Flynn, please say what's up to the people.
Man, what is up, everybody? The Nets are winning. That halftime was a turning point. Bruce Brown said the Nets found their sense of urgency. You love to see it. We got 2 wins, back-to-back wins, got the momentum rolling again. We're out here like Jameis Winston eating those W's. It feels good to be talking about wins. We don't have to be mad anymore. Keith is making a fool of himself on camera. It's a great day to be a Nets fan, baby.
Yo, I'm happy, man. I'm happy because we were about to walk into a 5-game losing streak, and I was hitting the doomsday button, like hitting the panic button. And you guys know I've been telling you on this podcast for weeks and months, don't worry. We have the firepower. We have the best team, the best roster, best front office. Like, we're going to do what we got to do. But the way that the Nets were playing, basically playing these regular season games like they were scrimmages, like they were exhibitions, like they were preseason NFL games, like, oh, we're going to rest guys. Oh, this guy is ramping up. Oh, we're not going to let Alize Johnson go. We're not going to let Nick Claxton go. We're going to, rest KD, which we have a back-to-back tonight. And I don't think KD is resting. I think KD is going to be full go. So change has come. The Brooklyn Nets organization, we defer to them all the time. We always say we're fans. We're just fanalists. We're not inside the building. They know way more than we know. So it seems like there's been a little bit of a change. There's definitely been like a sense of urgency that has come amongst this team. And I think it started Saturday night, but we won't talk too much about that right now because you know how we do this thing. We start off with the news and narratives. And the first thing that I want to speak on, because you all know what the deal is out here. Hold on. Can you see that? I know you can't see it on the pod, but you can read that on YouTube. It says, we support Kyrie, Nets World. And our guy Kyrie, his face is healing up because Vucevic, big dumbass, elbowed him in the face. But Kyrie continues to help people. We could literally make a long list. It'll probably look like a scroll of the things that Kyrie has done to help people, and it wouldn't even be half of the things because we don't know all the things that he does that don't make news. But this made news. Kyrie Irving organizes an adversary firm to support underrepresented businesses. So basically, Kai Family Enterprises has started Kai 11 Consulting. And when they say underrepresented entrepreneurs, you know what that means. Basically, minorities, people of color, people with just, less circumstance than others that don't necessarily get a fair shake out here in the business world. That's something I could relate to. That's something that I appreciate Kyrie doing. And a quote from the article, it says, in order to cater to community impact, Irving and his firm's goal is not to contribute to the financial norms that exist today, but rather to help and uplift businesses that don't have access to the right guidance in the business world. So I also relate to that. As a young man coming up out here on my own in the corporate world and now in this media space and social media and sports, there's a lot of times where I'm like, man, I wish I had a mentor. I wish I had someone to go to for advice or even someone to just connect me. So awesome to see Kyrie doing that. Hudson Flynn, do you care about that at all? Or you're not really worried about that?
I mean, first off, I do care about it because I care about the things Kyrie does off the court, right? I think it's pretty reasonable to say that the Talking Nets Twitter, amongst other things, is known for being a pretty heavy Kyrie, we support Kyrie account. Because, look, there's just so much hate out there. There's just so much negativity. There's all this negative press coming for essentially no reason. It's just by people who watch the box score. Honestly, I don't think anything exemplifies that more than the other day when Kyrie was holding the Nets in the game on his own, but he airballs a layup at the end of the game, and somehow that becomes the top story the next day. There's all this negativity out there. So it just feels good to be able to have another thing to point to. And at this point, we got a whole textbook of things we can point to that Kyrie has done for the community. And there, like you said, are things that we haven't seen. Like when he stopped the team bus and went out to give that man some money for his family. Like we only know about that because we got it on video. Right. He's doing things like that when the cameras aren't rolling. And it's just great to see. It's great to have a star on this team and stars on this team because we shouldn't, sleep on the things that Katie and James Harden have also done for the community that love supporting, the community, the areas they came from. It just feels good. It's a feel-good team. And it's nice to be able to counter the narrative that, the Nets are these super villains that don't care, that are weird, that are snakes, that are forcing their way to a super team. I love it, Keith.
Yeah. And the thing is, man, I don't understand why Kyrie consistently gets that much hate in the media. I don't know why they paint him as the villain. Even with the MVP voting, I think I saw he was number 9. And it made me think back to when he called the media pawns. And I think it was what's the black dude's name from The Athletic? Aldridge. He was basically he said something like, oh, well, don't expect any awards if you're calling the media pawns. The media is the one that votes for the awards. And I'm like, do you think Kyrie gives a fuck about an award from you guys? Like, come on. Think about how Kyrie thinks. You think he's losing sleep at night that you're not going to vote him into the MVP, even though he is having one of the best seasons he's ever had? We'll leave that discussion for another time. That's a perfect way to transition into the other MVP. Man, we made these I am the MVP shirts right after Harden said that, and then he got hurt. But shop.johnboymedia.com, search Talking Nets on there. You can find that stuff. We will have a sale on our old merch, hopefully, and then some new playoff merch coming real soon. But Harden, we got to talk about Harden coming back tonight, man. I feel like with our Twitter account and with our podcast, we kind of forced the narrative on some of these things, like with the Nets resting guys and with Harden not coming back till playoffs. We kind of stirred the pot, pun intended, on Harden coming back and getting some reps with the team. I was saying for a while, okay, we preach ramp ups. Harden doesn't have to ramp up before the playoffs. Hudson Flynn, what are you thinking? You think it happens tonight? You think against the Spurs tonight, back in Brooklyn, it goes down? I said I think he's back after the road trip.
I think he's back after the road trip. He's home. He's been traveling. He's been doing work with the team. If Steve Nash is talking positively about a return, then that means the return is about 1,000 times more likely because that's what his thing is. His thing is being careful, being cautious. And look, this was literally a once-in-a-career injury for Harden. He's never missed that many games before, right? He's not going to get hurt like that again. So for me, it's like, let's make sure he's right. Let's make sure he's at full speed. He's got that 0 to 60 time ready to go to be back for the playoffs. He even talked about it himself, playing a couple of games back. We got no more road games, Keith. We're at home. He's at home. Everyone feels good. We got fans in the arena. And look, the hope is that he plays tonight. The report is that it's going to be a game time decision, and we know the Nets like to be cautious, but I'm going to let myself hope, and I'm going to certainly keep myself refreshing the Nets Twitter feed to wait for that James Harden is active notification, because, man, that's going to make everything hit a different gear. That's going to make everything hit the next level. And it's coming, Keith, whether it's today, whether it's, for the next game, whether the game we're out against the Bulls, it's coming, happening. And the Nets are ready to go, and they got good momentum, and they got a good vibe going, and I'm just happy with it.
Give me the hype. Give me all the hype. Give me one of the best, if not the best player in the NBA on the team. Like, we need this to go. We need this to happen. I was saying back when we were looking at Harden showing off his jacket with plenty zippers and his other fit with the like pink orange pattern on it. I'm like, man, he's traveling with the team. He's dressing in a way where it's like, look at me, like he wants some attention, like don't forget about me. And I also alluded to the fact that we watched this dude take a shoulder to his chin and play. We watched this dude play 40 minutes a night. He is a solid hooper. And when I say solid hooper, yeah, I mean physically and solid, like makes the right decisions. You already know, I don't got to tell you about James Harden. But what I do got to tell you about is KD. Now, I'm about to plug this podcast, and it's not because we might have our guy Eddie Gonzalez watching. I actually sent this to Hudson and Twitchy because I listened to the podcast. I mean, I listen to every episode of the ETC's podcast, but I listened to the podcast the other day, and I was like, man, like, if you don't love KD, if you don't understand how much we don't deserve KD, like, think about what KD is. KD is a businessman. Let's start there first. If you look at 35 Ventures and you look at what these guys have their hands in and what they're doing out here, it's incredible. KD might be one of the richest men in the world when it's all said and done. Like, this guy also now like started this podcast, and on the podcast, I love it because he gets to control the narratives. He gets to jump in there. The last podcast was KD on the road, and him and Eddie just chop it up real quick, and they give you background on how he met KD, how Eddie met KD, and they talk about how KD used to get online and go on Warriors Twitter after the game. So, of course, that made me think about Nets Twitter. Nets Twitter was small, baby. Nets Twitter was a small, just maybe like 2,000 of us. Now it seems like there's 200,000 of us. And it's good that KD is, checking on those tweets. And I love the fact that, like, he goes out and hoops, and then he gets right on Twitter and talks to the fans. I'm like, oh, we don't deserve this guy. He's a businessman. He's one of the greatest baseball players. Sorry, I'm a baseball guy. One of the greatest basketball players of all time. And he understands social media. I think GQ called him the Twitter GOAT, the NBA Twitter GOAT. And he is, bro. Who else is going out there, right? Shannon Sharp beefs with him on Twitter. Then he goes out, drops 40, and then gets right back on Twitter and talks to the fans and gives us this level of connection with one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen that, like, you just don't usually get. We weren't ever going to get that from MJ, even if MJ had a Twitter. We got KD, and we are blessed. Hudson, you listened to the pod, right? What'd you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I thought, and obviously we had Eddie on the podcast, so again, shout out Eddie. Definitely listen to that podcast. That's a timeless episode. We were just talking to him about, his life, everything that's going on with him. That was less of a Nets episode, more of a personality episode. And he was one of the most chill dudes we've ever talked to. And obviously we've been able to talk to him a little bit more since then. And it's been really great talking to him. And on the podcast, KD talked about how they kind of have the same vibe, the chill vibe. And he kind of had to be on his toes with, KD, let me grab the food. I don't want you walking around on West 17th Street. Like, just like walking around, cutting it up. And KD's like, why? And I just think that's funny because, look, there's this massive separation. It's almost easy to see them as unhuman when you see KD, going out there and being this big star with all these followers and all this thing going on. But at the end of the day, he's just a guy from PG County, right? So he's going to have that connection. And it's cool that he can have that, like, low barrier of entry to talking with Nets fans and cutting it up. And it really just makes the whole community feel more involved. And he talks about how he gets some things from it. And obviously we get some enjoyment out of it. So like, what's the harm? I've never understood the whole, LeBron social media playoff blackout thing, right? Like, social media is not a hindrance. It's not going to slow KD down playing basketball like all these people like to talk about, on First Take and all these other shows. Like, oh, he's tweeting about Shohei Ohtani, but he just played a basketball game and he only put up 21 points. It's just like, let the man have some fun, and we're enjoying it. He enjoys it, and it's just like a chill vibe, and I like it because it just shows, again, like Kyrie's doing all this stuff in the community. He's chill. KD is just involved with Nets fans, Nets Twitter, talking to NBA Twitter, cutting things up. Like, it's just good vibes. It's good banter, and I really love it, and I think it's a connection that I've never been able to have with a star that's played for any of the teams I've been a fan of.
And at the end of the day, it's just Twitter. It's just a social media platform. It's an app in your phone. You can log out. Like, if y'all follow me on Twitter, I always talk about it. I'm like, yo, sometimes I'm looking at Twitter. I'm like, yo, Twitter ruins people's brains. Like, they can't think right. Like, they think everything they see on Twitter is real fact. Twitter is like an alternate universe that people think is like a real thing. But shout out to KD, shout out to Eddie, shout out to 35 Ventures. I love what they're building over there. I love what they're doing. Some inside baseball. In my former life, when I was a behind the scenes person, I applied to be social media manager for 35 Ventures when they were just getting going. This was like 2018. I think I had the first round like phone call interview, but I didn't make it any further than that. Hey, the way the way it was written, the way the universe was set up, I wasn't supposed to go there. I was supposed to come and do what I'm doing right here on Talking Nets. So let's keep it moving and let's talk Nets. First, I want to play 2 voicemails. I'm not going to have the voicemails at the end because these voicemails came in on Sunday, and they will lead us into the conversation about the game Saturday. Man, my Bluetooth disconnected, and I look at that. It's on, and you just heard me play you just literally heard me play the Brooklyn We Go Hard song, and then I go to play this. There's always some type of difficulty, bro. Like, nothing can ever just go the way I want it. All right. There it is. First voicemail coming from our guy, TN fam, Louis, a.k.a. Cold Like Minnesota.
Keith Hudson, it's Louis, Minnesota. You know me. This is the most heated I've been since the Suns game when Harden had to go for almost 50. He hit that buzzer beater. We all know the game. We have been preaching all year that we are winning games based off of talent and that we need to build chemistry. We need to show some compassion. At the end of that game, we showed some compassion and we showed some grit and some dog, that Brooklyn grit that 2018-19 team had, that Rondé Hollis Jefferson type shit. That's what we showed there. That is playoff basketball Jeff Green just did, taking a beating, making sure Jokic got ejected.
Bro, what happened?
I love it when Nets fans throw in those names.
Right there. We killed that game still. Really proud of my boys.
That's it. Go. All right. Well, you get the gist of what Louis was saying. I think it's hilarious.
I love it when people talk about Rondé and like those old regime Nets players. Because I know like I know what he's doing. I know he's like getting in those clout cards for being a fan before the big 3 showed up. He's like, just gotta let you know, I know who Rondé is. I know what he did against the Kings. I love that. But he's right though. Like, and Bruce Brown said it. They found a sense of urgency, and like it was a great energy. And the Nets really did shut down Jokic, and we got in his head. And Jeff Green did a lot of great stuff with that, and we were able to shut him down. Clax shut down the MVP, and he talked about how it's a turning point. I've talked about how it's a turning point. It's brought this team a lot of energy, and we saw that at the beginning of this Bulls game. And it just feels good to be able to have a win like that, where you see, okay, something changed. Someone said something. Someone did something in the locker room that got these boys ready to go, feeling themselves and like ready to go out and win a game. And I don't know what it was. I don't know who it was. Maybe when they do the championship DVD, we'll find out. But man, it's a huge win for Nets fans. It's a huge win for the Nets. And it's the right time to have a realization like that, because I don't want to have that kind of realization when we lose 2 games on home court or down 0-2 in a playoff series, right? It's the right time, and now we got the right energy.
Yo, I just think it's funny because, like, a lot of times I hated Rondé Hollis Jefferson's game. Like, RHJ used to frustrate me, and he's always the guy that gets to, like, he's the mascot of that. Like, if it's not D'Lo, it's him. And people always go back to him. And I'm like, nah, he's not the dude, bro. All right, here's another clip from our guy, Jeffrey, I believe.
What's up, guys? It's Jeffrey calling in after the Nuggets game, and damn, that was a hell of a good game. First half, I was like, shit, here we go again. We saw the lack of fluidity, the lack of hustle, the lack of rebounding defense. The rotation was kind of weird, but somebody definitely said something in the locker room that turned everybody up. Steve Nash was on the sideline getting fired up before the second half. Blake Griffin came out guns blazing in the third quarter. I think he had like 4 threes. Kyrie, KD, terrific shooting, absolutely unbelievable. Shamit and Joe Harris, I don't know what happened to them in the last few games. And the minutes Clax provided were absolutely insane. We saw what he did on defense against Jokic, against JaVale McGee. I keep telling everybody that Clax is the real deal, and he is the real deal. He is the defensive energy we need. The entire fourth quarter was probably the best defense I've seen the Nets play this season. A hard fought-out game. I think we held the Nuggets to less than 50 points in the second half. And yeah, they're pretty much there. On to Chicago.
Yo, Jeffrey, you the man, bro. You pretty much said everything that you needed to say looking at that game. And what I'll say about that game is this. I think that was the game.
Keith, I'm cutting you off right now. From Shams.
We got the Harden news.
Nets star James Harden plans to play tonight
man.
versus Spurs, assuming pregame warmups go smoothly.
Let's fucking go.
We got him. He's
Hold
back.
on, let me get on.
Run the
fucking
fucking Twitter, baby.
And
Let's go.
live.
Let's go.
And
we taking
live.
a quick. This is
we
what happens
live.
when we go live. We're taking a quick pause on the podcast to run
this is
these
great
tweets.
because this will be a clippable moment. Harden, the bearded one is back. Scary hours. No Kyrie, but still. Let's go. Run it up, man. Everybody retweet that and live in this. Our world, Nets world. It is our time, ladies and gentlemen. Like, this is it. I think I put out a tweet a couple nights ago I think it was after the Nuggets game. And I said, playoffs start now for the Nets. They need to treat these next 4 games like playoff games. There's no reason to lose these games. We have the 2 seed. We need that 2 seed. Even if they're saying, oh, we don't care about seeding, we'll worry about that later. No, secure the 2 seed, man. And if the Sixers keep messing around like they messed around last night and let Karras go at them and lose games, I know it's pretty much locked up, but someone told me there's a very small chance. Either way, get the 2 seed and do what you got to do and handle business. Last couple things about this Nuggets game, man. I got to give a shout out to Michael Porter Jr. That kid came out in that game and he was unconscious. I was so impressed with his first quarter. I think he had something like 17 points in the first 8 minutes. He couldn't miss. I also was impressed with the Marcus Howard kid out of Marquette. Kind of forgot about him, but, obviously Jamal Murray going down for the Nuggets and them not having him, weakens their team, but they're still a good team. I think they're like 4th or 5th in the West. And obviously they have Nikola Jokic, who didn't kill us, didn't dominate us, didn't ball out on us like some people might have thought as the, favorite for MVP. And, Jeffrey spoke on Nicholas Claxton being the real deal. He is. Let that young man go. We were on the last episode saying, why are we restricting his minutes? Why is he still ramping up? Why is he ramping up at 22? He didn't have COVID. He tested positive in the protocols or was around someone contract. Stop. And if the narrative was true that, they were punishing him, we don't have time for the kiddie punishments. We don't have time to teach these kids a lesson. We need him. We need him. He is a force on defense. He brings that energy. We talk about Brooklyn grit. He has that Brooklyn grit. He's from the South, but he's got that Brooklyn grit. Let's see. Anything else from the Nuggets game? Who do you think? So, all right, you guys remember Coach Nash was trying to call timeout, frantically trying to call timeout. And I think that was the most emotion we saw from him. I'm a Cowboys fan. He reminds me of Jason Garrett, like a clapper with low emotion. And when you see somebody like that show some emotion, you're on the verge of a breakthrough. I think I wrote that on one of the Talking Nets Instagram posts. Oh, I posted it. I posted Steve Nash trying to call timeout, and he looked frustrated. And I was like, we're on the verge of a breakthrough. This is a guy that was just watching us get smoked watching the Bucks go on like 16-1 runs and not calling a timeout. Now he's frantically trying to call a timeout, and he's pissed when he doesn't get it. So who do you think Hudson said something in the locker room? I think Nash probably still kept his cool, but who do you think? I know who I think it was. Who do you think had some words for the team in the locker room and might have literally changed our season because the way they came out second half firing and locked in, that was a complete different team, and it carried over to the Bulls game last night.
So last time it was Uncle Jeff, right? When we had that game after the Pistons lost, he came in the locker room and he was the one that got everybody to shut up. But this time, honestly, I feel like leadership comes from the top, right? I think it was Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I was going to say Kyrie.
I think it
might have been them both.
One A or one B. It could have been them both. I think leadership comes from the top. You look up to your best players. You look up to your captains, and they're the ones that decide, what's going to fly and what's not going to fly. And I think that's exactly what happened. And I think they really just got the team going. But regardless of who it was, thank goodness it happened, because it looked like it might have changed the Nets season.
I think it did. That's NBA turning point, like NFL turning point. That was NBA turning point. I think it was Kyrie because of this. When that second half started, Kyrie was so locked. Like the energy on defense, like his energy carried through the whole team. Blake too. I think Blake might have also said something as a veteran, as a superstar or former superstar. But Blake, don't sleep on Blake. We'll talk about Blake in a minute. He still got it. I think Blake, I think Uncle Jeff, but really Kyrie and KD probably said something. And Mike James had a quote yesterday in the post game about how sometimes, they know how talented they are. They know how many hoopers they got on that team. And sometimes they come into games a little chill or lackadaisical. And they need to lock in and they need something to happen. And we were down 21. That's a huge comeback. And notice how ESPN on Sunday and Monday, they kind of swept that under the rug. They didn't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about any other team comes back from down 21 to win the way the Nets did. And that would have been the leading game they talk about on SportsCenter. Huge comeback. Like, that's what used to happen when the Nets beat the Kings. That's what you said. You know what I'm saying? Like, now
it's just because the Nets aren't the good story anymore. And we'll talk about what they said on Eddie and KD's pod again, right? They talked about how people don't watch the games. They just watch for the narratives. And if it doesn't fit the narratives, they're not going to talk about it, right? And that's what's going on with the Nets. Because let me tell you, the Nets would have been the top story everywhere if they got blown out and lost another game like we thought they were going to in that first half. It would have been the top story. It would have been, the Nets are done. The Nets can't do it. But they didn't do it. And now there's no narrative to talk about, right? So, of course, they're not going to get the love.
If the Nets had lost that game and the losing streak went to 5, every talking head would have been telling you why the Nets can't win the championship, why this was a failure, why this isn't going to work, why Sean Marks did this, why James Harden isn't playing and this team doesn't play any defense, why they're not going to be able to compete in the playoffs. Instead, these guys rose up to the challenge, right? We always play good in the West. We always play up to our competition, minus those 2 games we just had against the Bucks. But these guys flipped the switch and said, nah, we're not going out like that. We have too much talent. Lock in, focus up, right? Play defense better. Challenge these guys more. And they did. And the last thing on the Nuggets game I want to say is late in that game, I was just so proud of how the bench played in the fourth quarter while KD and Kyrie were resting. It's like a story where you know where this is going. Like, you know what's going to happen. The bench gives us good minutes. Uncle Jeff was like, he was the A1 guy. He was scoring, shooting, dunking. He was like the A1 guy. Claxton was giving us energy. When KD and Kyrie came into the game, you knew it was closing time. And that's what we're going to need to see in the playoffs. There's going to be times where these guys have to rest. They can't play the full game. And we're going to need the bench to play tough against other teams' benches, which I said multiple times, I think we have the best role players and the best bench guys. And when you look at these matchups, obviously everyone's going to talk about Harden, KD, Kyrie, but those guys got to rest. And that's where some games get swung in the playoffs. It's like, damn, when the stars sit down, do you go on a run or do you go down some points? And these guys stepped up locker room. I would love to have known what went on in the locker room because I think it was some spirited conversations. Probably some people checking some people. Probably some people really like taking a hard look in the mirror like, who do y'all want to be? What do y'all want to do? We've got one goal, and that's to win a championship. And that's where we're headed, man. That carried over into the next game, right? So that was game 69 of 72. The Nets beat the Nuggets Saturday night in Denver, 117-112. Now on to game 70 of 72, or no, 69 of 72. We got 3 more games left. Nets beat the Bulls Tuesday night in Chicago. That's the last game of the road trip in the United Center. First thing I want to say about that is I don't care that Zach LaVine had 41. The Nets historically.
You know, like, did he actually?
I mean,
like,
I think he had.
That was the least impactful 41 points I've ever seen in my entire life.
I think he had 41, but it was such a non-factor. It didn't matter. And usually the Nets let these guys go off for their career highs. I was just happy he didn't go for 70. Like, I'm like, all right, you know, LaVine, we all know what Zach LaVine is. He's a savage. He's a beast and all that. Biggest thing from that game, Vucevic, who's a punk. I saw Hudson's tweet. It got featured in the NBC article. It said if Vucevic comes to Brooklyn, it's on site, and he will be here Saturday, and we will be in the stadium Saturday. So if he wants to throw hands, these hands are rated.
It's going to be a Jose Altuve type moment. You can't go out there dropping the people's elbow on Kyrie and Mike James.
Yeah, I mean, fuck Altuve chants were ringing off in the stadium. If we can get some Vucevic, I don't know if we can pull that off.
And I'll tell you though, Clack shut him down. That was the story of that game. Was Clack shut him the hell down? That was the first time. The first time I think in my memory that the Nets ever shut down Vucevic completely, and it was because of Nick Claxton completely, 100%.
It didn't matter that LaVine had his 41. That's cute and all. Claxton showed you, man, he's a beast. He's a bully, and he just wants to smoke with everybody, and you love that. Because this young guy, like I said, I don't know why they were playing games with him coming back. I guess, like I said, maybe it was some type of punishment. Maybe it was like, okay, you're a young guy and you're going out partying and you're coming back with like COVID tracing stuff. We need to like teach you a lesson. But like, ain't nobody got time for that. You got to let Clax rock and get confidence. And I would have liked to see him more against Giannis. I guess also there could be one school of thought that maybe we didn't want to show him to Giannis much because we could end up in a series with them. Instead, we got to see Claxton versus Nikola Jokic and Nikola Vucevic. And I don't know what else y'all need to see. Clax is the real deal, like Jeffrey said. He's ready to play.
He is a all NBA caliber potential defender, honestly. And I'm not even saying that as a Nets fan. If you watch him, you have to believe that. With the length that he has and with the ability to switch onto ones, he is an all NBA caliber defender.
He's on his way. I see Clax being defensive player of the year down the line. I saw Bam talking his shit saying that he's, defensive player of the year. I see him being, on an all defensive team. I love his defensive energy, and he's not afraid of anybody. It's not just bigs. You all know. I know I don't have to tell y'all about Claxton and what the deal is with him, but let's talk about that masked man, Bruce Wayne Brown, the Batman. So Bruce Wayne, I'm already calling him that. Bruce Wayne returns from a broken nose injury. I think he missed 7 games. He comes back with the mask. You all know the mask vibes. We've seen Kyrie with the mask. We've seen LeBron with the mask. We've seen Kobe with the mask. I seen the Rick Hamilton tweet that Hudson put out with the mask. Quickly, he was getting active and doing work. He had a quick 15 points. I know we were thinking, his career high is 29. Maybe he was going for that, but something changed in the second half. It's just good to see Bruce Brown back. He is the definition of a glue guy. He's the definition of a lunch pail guy, gritty Brooklyn player that's going to come in, get you rebounds, steals, can shoot it better now, is going to finish at the rim better now. And, we're lucky to have him back. He is one of those underdogs, right? This team is full of underdogs that are now going to be on top. Hate it or love it, the underdogs on top. Nick Claxton, Mike James, Alize Johnson. I know he's not getting that much run, but he's on this team. He's going to get a ring when we win it. Bruce Brown, even guys like Joe Harris. Like, there's a lot of guys on this team that were counted out. There's a lot of guys that are making waves now. So good to see him. Mike James, man, I don't know why people hate on Mike James. What's the reason to hate on a guy like Mike James?
They thought he was volume shooting too much and turning the ball over too much, which, like, calm down. People were calling him like another Chioza. I don't agree with that.
He's
Because what we've seen from Mike James hasn't necessarily been the revelation that we thought it was going to be after we saw him play one game. But what we've seen is a great player who can slide in when the Nets need time for one of their point guards to go out of the game. And that's obviously going to be less of a factor with Harden coming back. But he's got a pretty deep bag, right? Like, we saw that last night. No push-offs, no trips, no nothing. He sent my dude Thomas Satoransky face first into the shadow realm. It was a murder. It was a murder on the court, murder on the timeline, murder she wrote. Oh my God. That was like, and I sent out a tweet on the Talking Nets account just saying the same thing. If Steph, LeBron, KD, Kyrie, James Harden, if any star had done that, it would be the #1 highlight for the rest of the season.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just a fact.
It would get played 3 million times in one night. And that's what I'm saying. What's the hate on Mike James, especially if you're a Nets fan? This is a Sean Marks find. Anybody in the NBA could have signed him from Russia.
The Knicks almost did.
Anybody could have taken a look at this guy. But Sean Marks said, yeah, we're going to bring him in. And when Kyrie went out last night with the elbow, he played a lot of minutes. And it's good to have him because we don't have Chioza. We don't have Spencer Dinwiddie. We literally need a guy like Mike James. He's in his bag. He's a show off. And when I say that, I mean that in a good way. Like, he's showing you some stuff. He could shoot. He could dribble. He can cross over guys. He can dish it. Another underdog playing for your Brooklyn Nets at a high level. What else from this game? Bouncy Blake. You said his knees were shot. You said he couldn't dunk anymore. He was washed. Nah, I think Blake wants to get a ring this year. I think Blake is going to keep putting back dunks, alley-oops, whatever it is. I don't even think twice about him dunking. When I see Blake dunk, I'm like, that's the Blake Griffin we've watched for years. Maybe not as explosive, but he's still got it. Good to have. That's another guy that the NBA, anybody in the NBA could have reached out to him, could have talked to him, could have signed him, and he lands in Brooklyn. In Marks we trust, and Marks we trust, and Marks we trust, and Marks we trust. What else from the Bulls game? KD with with 21 leading us, but like I love this game because it's like, okay, Kyrie goes out. This thing could change when Kyrie goes out. And KD could have taken the approach of, all right, now I got to turn it on and go for 40. We just saw him last week go for 40 back-to-back games. Instead, KD is there as a decoy, which I love the tweet last night where he said, Mans thinks I'm supposed to go off at the Rucker. Like, this is the Rucker every night. This is the NBA, bro. There's strategy involved because the person tweeting at him was saying that, like, oh, KD rather sit in the corner as a decoy instead of, like, what? KD, with his 21 points, he hit clutch shots when we need him. He hit the baskets that we needed him to make. He didn't have to control the ball every possession and go for 40 because Kyrie was out. Your thoughts on KD's 21? He still was player of the game. He had like another 8 assists. And it's KD, bro. We're talking about basketball IQ. You think KD doesn't realize what's going on? After the game, KD talked about the whole Bulls team. Like, he basically was giving them compliments. Clearly, he's been watching their team. So, what are your thoughts on that? This game and KD.
I mean, it's KD, right? Like, on this podcast, we make sure that we don't try to do too much of the analysis side. And, we know we've watched every Nets game this year. I've watched every minute of every Nets game. I know some things about basketball, right? But I am not going to try and talk to KD and tell him, like, what kind of arrogant, mindset, anonymous mindset do you have to tell Kevin Durant that he's just sitting in the corner being lazy? Like, are you that's just some nonsense. It's some comical nonsense. And look, we'll go back to what he said on the podcast. I mean, and we can't tell you enough to listen to that podcast because I hope you guys did so you can actually know what we're referring to. He said, Eddie said, I'm not trying to talk basketball to you on that level because I can't. Because you can't, because nobody can. Maybe LeBron can, Kyrie can, James Harden can. But it's Kevin Durant, guys. And this is something I want to tell Nets fans. They know what they're doing. As much as we hate on Nash for his rotations and maybe we don't like certain things that are happening, and we can make those points. But at the end of the day, it's Kevin Durant, right? He's not standing in the corner because he's lazy.
Man, So it's funny because the term fanalist is a term that I came up with. And really, that term was spawned off of hearing KD. I forget if it was a podcast. It was before he said what he said on the ETCs. But I think he was on Old Man in the Three with JJ Redick. See, I'll be listening. And he said, yo, some of these journalists, some of these reporters, some of these talking heads, they never played a lick of basketball, dog. They don't understand what's going on out there. What they see on the court, they can't realize whether they're playing a zone defense, whether they're playing man, whether they're switching. These guys try and talk so deep into basketball, and they can't hoop themselves. They never hoop past the 5th grade little league. Like, that's why I came on this pod, and we had an episode where I called the episode The Narratives Game. And all I did was give Hudson like 10 narratives, and we went back and forth. And one thing I said in that, off the top of my head, I said, we're not analysts, we're fanalists, aka we're just fans of this. We're regular guys watching as fans. And you know what? If you watch enough as a fan, you can learn a lot. Hudson, like he said, has watched every game. Hudson knows his shit, especially with the Nets, because he's watching every second of every game. But he's not trying to question a KD, definitely not on a public forum like Twitter. And I said on the pod,
You got way too many followers to be doing shit like that.
Yeah, hell no. We're about to hit 10K. We can't do no goofy shit. But I said on that same pod, I was like, you guys that try and get on your podcast, your TV show, or write your articles and act like you know basketball at that level, guys like KD, they laugh at you and they'll never do an interview with you and they'll never work with you. Guys like us admit, hey, I stopped hooping when I was like 13, bros. And if you got me on the court right now, I don't know how decent I would be. I'll never step on the podcast and talk X and O's and acting like I know what goes on an NBA court, because there's levels to this shit, and we are not on that level. All right. What else from this game, man? 8 guys score in double digits. It's just a good win. It's back-to-back wins. We are in control and in control of our destiny. I want the 2 seed.
At the very least, that's the minimum.
I want the 2 seed. I don't want no matchup with the goofy-ass Knicks. They're about to drop. The Celtics. I don't know. We'll see who we end up with. The Heat. I don't really want the Heat either.
I actually don't want the Heat in particular. I prefer the Knicks.
I don't want
the
7 games with them or 5 games and whatever it's going to be. We actually put out a poll like, who do you guys want to see? And we got some decent responses from that. And like the Knicks were the heavy response, but I know that's just we're in New York.
Yeah, Knicks and Celtics were the favorites.
That's Knicks fans voting for the Knicks.
No, I agree with that though. Like, honestly, the Knicks, I got no problem smoking the Knicks. Then there's no easy route to the finals, right, Keith? Like the Nets they're not going to sneak their way into the finals. This isn't the bubble. You're not playing a team that's starting Rodions Kurucs, right? We're playing good teams that have chances to win games night in and night out, right? So at this point, like there are some matchups that I prefer, some that I don't. But at this point, like we get the 2 seed, we do whatever we can to make sure we have the matchups we like. But at the end of the day, it's about winning. We're not going to avoid the Sixers. We're probably not going to avoid the Bucks. So we just got to go out there and win and do what we can to win. Obviously, we got Harden back. That's the first step. But we just got to do it, Keith. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's going to be a long summer if we don't.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this in the next 10 minutes or less. This is your opportunity in the YouTube chat to send questions in. I know now it's scrolled up, and I know some people were asking some stuff in the beginning. So if you have questions in the YouTube chat, send them in now. What we just talked through was game 68-72, Nets versus Nuggets, game 69-72, Nets versus Bulls. And looking ahead at the upcoming schedule, the last 3 games tonight, hopefully James Harden is back. No, they announced it. He's definitely playing, right? They said it was going to be a game time decision.
He's expected to play, is what Shams said.
Good. Solid body James been ready to play. So game 70 out of 72 will be tonight in Brooklyn against the Spurs, rocking the 1991 New Jersey throwbacks. Saturday, Talking Nets fam will be in the building for another game against the Bulls. I think we're wearing the City Edition jerseys. We'll be in there about like 18 deep. Still got to figure out sending all those tickets and get them squared away. If I have an extra ticket, I will possibly give it away because you can only sell. If I have 2 extra tickets, I'll probably put them on the resale market. But if I have 1 extra ticket, that's going to go to a lucky fan. And the key word for the lucky fan, right? I wanted to kind of embed this into podcast so that people can listen. The key word for the lucky fan is Harden. If you're listening to the podcast, there's going to come a time that we tweet out what the keyword is, and the first person or persons to reply to that tweet with the keyword will win that one ticket to come watch the game with us Saturday for free. Looking at the last game, Sunday, Cavs, Jared Allen, our boy. When you guys are talking about the gritty Nets and the old Nets, say Jared Allen before you say Rondé Hollis Jefferson. I'm looking forward to seeing him. He would be here on the last Sunday game in Brooklyn. And that's going to wrap the season. And there's going to be a week. There's going to be a play-in, and there's going to be a week for the Nets to practice and get better and get ramped up. And for us at Talking Nets to get ramped up and get ready too. And then we're going to do a Tailgate Brooklyn watch party, no live pod, but a watch party in Brooklyn Saturday, May 22nd. Everyone pull up. Everyone is welcome. It's free to show up. Make a reservation on resi.com with Tailgate Brooklyn, and we'll be out there. The glue guys are going to be out there. I'm hoping to get Wingspan out there, Fireside Nets, Matt Brooks, some of the guys from Nets Daily for that first game of the Nets playoff run. And since we already went through voicemails, let's look quickly at the chat and see if you guys have any questions that we can answer. I think I'm really just seeing random conversation, which we appreciate, man. I like doing these live now because it gives Nets fans a place to come and talk to each other, hopefully without any Knicks fans, with just us to talk about the team and the game. So, all right,
Yeah, question. We got one though, Keith. I got one I want to ask you actually.
Okay, go for
because
it.
this is becoming a very big topic of conversation. The Sixers. Are you scared of them? You think they're going to beat the Nets?
Nah, they're weak sauce. And I've been seeing today is the anniversary of Kawhi Leonard hitting that shot that beat the Sixers in Toronto and then led to the memes and the videos of Joel Embiid crying like Caden Randall. I just don't think the Sixers, I know they have Doc Rivers. I know this is their best season they've had in a while. But I think back to that game where Alize Johnson was given Joel Embiid problems, where Doc Rivers had to get his starters off the bench to close that game out. And you just saw the Nets literally laughing at the Sixers. I don't think the Sixers beat us in a 7-game series. I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be fun. I think Joel Embiid is going to do his thing. I think Tobias Harris will do his thing, and Ben Simmons will eat too, but not against James Harden, KD, Kyrie, and our cast of underdog role players that are going to be hungry. And that will be the game to get to the finals. The Nets aren't losing to the Sixers.
Absolutely not, Keith. That's all. I mean, that's all we got to say, right? Nets are winning. Nets are rolling. Let's get it. Let's keep this.
Luis says, what do you
going.
guys think about Karras dropping 35 to keep the Sixers from clinching the 1 seed?
He's gonna be a star.
I don't think that stops it, but I love Karras, bro. I like.
He's been
like,
so good.
He's like I'm like a proud dad watching him. I got to meet him a couple years back. He's just so humble and quiet, but like he's a humble beast. And like I really think in Indiana, where he was drafted, where he played college basketball, like I think he is going to become a star there, and we're going to watch him and just it's going to be that Wolverine meme. It's going to be a picture of Wolverine in the bed looking at or a Wolverine in the bed looking at a picture of Karras. Like that's just what Nets fans are going to be on watching him kill it. So, good for Karras helping us out. And, you love to see a former Net, always a Net, thriving in the NBA.
Him and Big J. I love it. I love that they're doing well. I love that they're having, a good time in their new homes. I hope maybe they'll come back to Brooklyn one day. Who knows?
They helped us get here. They literally built the foundation.
They're getting a ring.
Here.
They are getting
a ring. They are getting a ring. They were on this team in the beginning of the year. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Is there another question in here? Will Mike James be signed for the playoffs? Honestly, I don't know. And that's another thing. Why are y'all hating on Mike James? This guy might not even sniff the court in the playoffs. Like that's what I understand. I don't understand why like Nets fans like have hate on him. I think it's just NBA fans like because he came out of nowhere and they just hate on the Nets and they hate on any players that are like, I don't know, making noise and unexpected too. If it's not Steph, if it's not Giannis, if it's not LeBron or AD, like they can't get the same light. All right, that's it. Talking Nets 102. Please leave a voicemail. We only got 2 voicemails, which is fine. The voicemail number is for you to call and be heard on the podcast. It's 201-870-0461. Now, I got to really ask for some reviews. I wanted us to get to 100 reviews before playoffs. That's looking like it's not going to happen unless 23 of y'all decide you really love Keith and Hudson and you really appreciate all the work that we've done to build this Talking Nets fan brand, to give you guys a place to come in, on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and come together and rep your Nets. Write a review. You could just leave a 5-star review with a thumbs up emoji, and that'll do it for us. We need reviews on Apple Podcasts, so if you have an iPhone, please hook it up. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Talking Nets, Instagram, Facebook as well. Follow us across platforms for this playoff run. We won't let you down. We are working and plotting and planning it now. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you at the game Saturday. And then the Saturday after that, we'll see you at Tailgate Brooklyn. We back outside. We fully vaxxed. It's nothing. We're getting back to regular real life. Hudson, you got anything else? All right. Well, Talking Nets 102. It's been real. It's been fun. And you already know how we wrap the show, and I think it's going to be a reality before our next pod. We're going to have 18 of us in the Barclays Center watching James Harden. We're not going to see the big three together because Kyrie probably won't play with the face contusion, but we need to get another win. It's the last Saturday night in the Barclays Center regular season. We're going to have a crew together. We're going to vlog it, and I'm going to make sure on camera we get everybody to say, "Let's go Nets, Brooklyn."
That's a wrap. And that's also my bad. You hear his airplane going over. I had it muted for that, and then I tried to unmute. It didn't unmute. We got it though. I was just saying leave some reviews.
Did it catch on your audio recording?
Yeah, it should.
Then we're good. I figured that.
I was just saying leave some reviews, dog. Like, we know how many people listen to the podcast. Like, it's easy.
No, there's way 77 people have written reviews. 4 times that many people listen to the podcast consistently. At least. And I mean, if you add the YouTube viewership and then the followers on Instagram and Twitter, show some love. Write a review. Sarge says, "Do you think the big three will gel together well in the playoffs with only 7 games under their belt?" Yeah.
Yes.
So here's what I think. It sucks that we're still not going to get to see them together on the floor for these last few games. But I just wanted Harden to get back on the floor these last few games with these guys. The team is different. The team has changed. I want Harden to ramp up against other competition. They're going to have a week, right? The play-in comes up 17th, 18th, 19th. They're going to have from May 17th to May 21st. They're going to have 5 days. 5 days of film, of practice, of drills, of strategy and planning and chemistry building together. They're going to be fine. I really do think that they're going to gel because at the end of the day, this is James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant.
And if there's anyone that's going to gel, it's James Harden, right? Like the assist king.
You're not going to have too much trouble getting those guys to figure it out. They know what's going on. And
he's like a pass first point guard. He's good.
This isn't a combination of like, okay, let's look at the Bucks. The Bucks have their big three of Giannis, Middleton, and Drew Holiday. Now, Giannis, yes, has some playoff experience, but he ain't made it to an Eastern Conference Finals, right? Middleton has been with him. And Drew Holiday, what playoff experience does he really have? When we're looking at our big three, we're looking at guys with rings. KD has a couple rings. Kyrie has a ring. And then we're looking at a guy in James Harden who has been to the Western Conference Finals and took a team to the playoffs like 8 years in a row, pretty much on his own back. And these are guys that are former MVPs, and Harden and KD, and then Kyrie, a guy that could be an MVP one day. I just look at the level, right? Their level, it's not going to take long for them to gel and figure it out. And they're going to adapt and they're going to play to the strength. It depends on who we're matching up against. And when we're looking in the East, like there's no team that scares me in the East. There's no team that scares me in the NBA. A couple episodes ago, I said the team that matches up best with the Nets, like, isn't constructed. Like, there's no team in the NBA that actually is going to stop the fully healthy Brooklyn Nets. So I'm not worried. There's no reason to worry.
No, I mean, there's nothing to be worried about. Like, there's going to be trials, going to be tribulations. We're going to lose games, probably. I mean, I don't think we're going to go 16-0.
But that's
like,
the playoffs. Ball's going to bounce
right?
some way, and, it's going to come down to some missed shots or whatever, and that's fine. All right, I got to go. I got a ton of stuff to do. There's 2 games tonight. We'll see you guys on for those. For me, Yankees and Nets, 2 games. We'll see you guys on Twitter. Thanks for watching. Once again, subscribe to the pod and write us a review. Talking Nets. We out of here.
Peace out, y'all.